Hi, friends. Logan Clements here with the Better Events podcast. And in this week's episode, we're building on this attendee engagement theme I've been talking about with my guest co-host, Lee Gimpel. And this week, we're going to have some fun and we're going to talk about some different formats that you might want to consider for your next event. These go beyond just the speaker with slides or your standard panels. We share real examples that we've used at events that we've been working on, as well as just some of the different formats of sessions that are out there. And I do want to encourage you, there is something here for you. It doesn't have to be that you reinvent your entire event agenda, but that there is something there that you could tweak one session that maybe keeps missing the mark, and changing it up and doing a different, more unconventional session format might be the solution you were looking for. So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events podcast.
Hi, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Logan Clements. And this week, I'm rejoined by my lovely guest co-host, Lee Gimpel. And we are going to be talking even more about different things you can do with your event to increase engagement and just that attendee experience. And before we go beyond the lectures, we have our conversation starter, which, Lee, this one makes me giggle, but I figured it'd be worth our listeners knowing our answer to it. But what's your favorite way to eat potatoes?
Well, I would say I've been a vegetarian for many, many years. I started when I was 5 years old. So I will say I have eaten a lot of potatoes in places where, like, everyone else was enjoying something else, like a nice steak. And the standby was always like, well, you'll just have the baked potato. There are lots of really great ways to make potatoes. I have lots of them saved on like my Instagram that I intend to make. Like there's like 1,000-layer one, but I'm going to go with the old reliable. My gift to myself whenever I do long car rides, McDonald's French fries. Yeah, it doesn't get better. That's mine. I'm going with McDonald's French fries. Logan Clements, what is your favorite potato form?
Love. Yeah. I laugh. We were on the same page, except I would say it probably used to be McDonald's. And then here in the Seattle area, we have this Pacific Northwest brand called Dick's. And they are a burger company, and they literally just, their menu's like 6 things. And one of them is burgers, 2 different kinds of burgers, I think, and then milkshakes. And then they have French fries that are a little more of the, like, has part of the potato skin on them, but that same like deliciousness, like McDonald's, of like nice and thin. And so French fries from Dick's Burgers are my, probably where I would say my favorite way to eat potatoes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're only going to have 5 things on the menu, they better be great.
And they do not disappoint.
Well, I'm making a trip out to Seattle to see if we can put these to the test.
Definitely. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit more about why we picked this topic?
Yeah. So the topic we are calling is going beyond lectures. And I think we're looking at some non-traditional ways to do sessions. I think we fall into these traps of, well, I've seen a conference before and I know that it has lectures. I know that it has panels, and that's all that we could possibly pull from. Maybe occasionally there's like there's a round table or something like that. But yeah, I think to mix things up just for the sake of diversity, but I think there are other formats that just do things better, and I think better engage an audience. And if you are someone like me that believes that so much of the value of bringing people together is actually bringing those people together, then having people passively sit in an audience and just be talked at with a lecture or with a panel feels like it wastes an enormous opportunity that we have. And we're given this opportunity of like hundreds of hours of people sitting in a room just sort of zoning out. And I guess the part of this that I think about a lot is that for me, I'm doing conference work, a conference. And when we think about that root word of conference, it's confer, it's a conference, and it's, to confer, to talk with each other and not be talked at. And I try and hold that in my mind quite a bit when I'm thinking about session design and event design.
I feel like planners should put that on that definition of conference on like a slide before they start a planning meeting. I feel like that could help refresh people. And yes, it's about conferring and not being talked at. We've done a couple episodes now together talking about attendee engagement. Oh, I like that. You've got a card for our visual folks. Lee here. Tell us what you're holding up.
I have a card. So if you're tuning in at home, but you can't see, there's two words. One is conference and one is meeting. And conference, we have underlined the part that says confer, and under meeting, we have underscored the part that says meet. And I think that's what I want people to remember. It's a place where people confer, they talk to each other. It's a place where they meet, where they do actually connect. It's not just a present-a-thon or something like that. And I think we often forget that.
Oh, so good. I will definitely be borrowing that for my desk to remind me. But I feel like we need to start with maybe trying to understand the why behind this. Like, why do conferences keep defaulting to your standard presentations, to your standard panels, when we're going to talk about them later, but when there are other options on the table?
In our previous episode, you hit on something that I think is important, that this seems scary. If we've done something over and over and, we've seen it, we know it works, or like we know how to do it, it doesn't feel that scary. So I think that's part of it is just the comfort level. I think there's the inertia of this is what we've done before. And I inherited an event. I've inherited, a successful event. It's been going for 20 years. My job is to rerun this event. My job is not necessarily described as go and reinvent this event. So, I think there's some safety in, hey, this is what I've seen and this is what I've done. And then I also think, as event people, maybe we just don't see enough that's different. Even some of the industry conferences for event people seem very normal and don't really give us a chance to say, oh, that's a role model event or something that I could do different, or, I could change that even if I don't do it the same way, just to sort of expand the horizons there. So yeah, I put a lot of faith in it. I think it's really great. I know you do as well. You've done some of this with your own. I mean, you produce events, but then you also put on your own event with BepCon. So tell me, like, what have you done differently here, and why, Logan?
Yeah, I mean, first to touch on your point early, because I do think it's fear-based. And then I also do think some event folks just get overwhelmed. And then to create and think a little bit outside the box or try one of these new sessions, I think it can feel like it's going to take a lot more effort. And that alone can be a barrier, or just at least make it feel hard to do versus just, copy and paste. I just have to find a speaker. Speaker will bring the slides. Speaker will do that. Great. Let me just do that, versus having to think and find facilitators or moderators for these smaller things. And I just want to challenge you, if you're someone who's hearing that, as Lee and I are talking, just take a second to think about why you're having that pushback to some of our ideas, because I think while today might not be the day to come up with one or listen to one of these ideas and have it resonate, something we've experienced, Mary and I, with the conference is our planning process has had to be pretty fluid. Like, we are constantly thinking about next year's event. Like, right when the minute last year's BepCon ended, we were thinking about next year's, and we just have like a note on our phone because we get random ideas at random times. And so having a place that we can capture some of that info when, our inspiration strikes, I think has been helpful for me. At our conference, we've learned that there are plenty of event pro conferences that talk at you.
And if I may, there's two sides to it. There's an online version, and then you do it in person too. So you get both sides of that.
Yes. Yeah. So we have both of the experiences, and we've created them as two very different experiences. So that was even just one, like, I've been to too many bad hybrid events or realized how hard they are to do well, that we have split them completely. So we do an in-person only day in Seattle in December, but before that we do a virtual only day in October. And they achieve different goals because we had some people who want to be in person. We know virtual also keeps the ticket price low for folks so we can reach more. But we've tried to get away from speaker talking at you, because I don't know if you've been an attendee, but Mary and I were like, when we go to a webinar and it's a speaker with slides, we're probably turning our cameras off. And I'm probably multitasking because you don't need my full attention. I'm going to absorb maybe a little bit of what you're doing, but like, that's just where our brains are. Then if you put me in a room, like in a small group, in a virtual breakout room, or an in-person small group, I'm going to probably feel uncomfortable texting, because we're all trying to chip in and be a part of this, be a part of the session. So one session that's worked really well for us, both virtually and in person, is from Liberating Structures. So that was one I would encourage any event pro, if you haven't read Liberating Structures, you can also just Google it and read some of their free things, but I read their textbook on it. And it's all these different formats of how to spark discussions and solve problems. Some of it applied a little bit more, it felt like, to internal meetings, but there were pieces I could pull as an event planner. And one of them was this like group consulting thing, which is where you have one person present a problem, and then in person, we had them turn their back and they have to listen to the other 3 people in their 4-person group talk about what solutions they would present for that problem. And we did it virtually too, with the person muting and turning their camera off. And the funniest thing is, for event planners, we're very good at being like, wait, when someone gives a suggestion, it's like, wait, but it's like, this takes that part out of it. You have to just listen and you can't rebuttal. And it is very interesting what unlocks for people. Maybe not something you say, but maybe something they say sparks a different thing I had in my head, and that helps me have a solution. And just that alone has accomplished so much. Like that one session we've now repeated, I think, the last 3 years, both virtually and in person. We consistently hear from attendees that is one of their favorite sessions. And that just takes facilitation, and it takes the risk of us trying it the first time, just to be like, let's try it and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I just ran, the Liberating Structures calls it Troika, right? And I just ran it a couple of weeks ago now with a group of like 150 CEOs or something like that. And it's amazing, right? I mean, you just see the light bulbs come on for people, and it sort of does double duty, right? If people get their own insights solved or their own problems addressed, but then the bonding that happens in these groups is way different than just I bumped into somebody while I was holding a Danish and, where are you from? I'm from Chicago. Oh, me too. It's like, it's totally different. You were in the foxhole with somebody, and I love it. I love it.
It's one of our favorites. Another one we've done is like the again, I don't know the terms sometimes for them, but we did kind of a panel where it was Mary and I, and we had an empty seat. And we had an extra mic, and we in person did this, that we would just let anybody, we were just doing like hot takes about events. And if anyone felt inspired, they could come up and take a mic and take a seat and answer, give their answer and then go back. And that has turned, it's like the last session of the day. We do it on purpose there because people are warmed up, they're comfortable, they know each other. And it has just been, again, a pleasant surprise to see who stands up and comes and takes the mic. And it's just something different, and you can feel there's this sense of community in the room, that if it was just Mary and I and a third arbitrary panelist that we'd pre-picked and we'd pre-coached, like that's a very different session. But again, something we just wanted to try and see if people liked it, and they did. So that's a reason why I think we've repeated it now the last 2 years.
Yeah, I would love to just travel the world only doing that one format if I could. It works so well on so many levels, and it's just so rewarding to do it. And then I guess the other side of this is I just feel sad that there are so many conferences that have never scratched the surface of something like that. And you just have people that are not getting that individual help and that individual time that another format could afford them.
Yeah. I'd love, Lee, if you could rattle off a couple of those alternative session formats that maybe some of our listeners haven't heard of.
Yeah, I'll maybe not pull lots of super exotic ones, but I could be here all day. But I love the idea of saying we've done lectures, we've done panels. What else is out there? And I think also when people say, oh, but we do roundtables, I will say to them, okay, but what kind of roundtables have you done? And it kind of blows people's minds because they're like, I don't know, roundtables. We put people at tables, they talk. And then they will often say, and it didn't go very well. And I go, and I know the answer. I go, why? Describe it for me. And they say, well, we've got these big 10-person tables, and we put 12 people there, and then we give them about 20 minutes, and we tell them the topic is AI. And then people don't tend to love it. And you're like, well, it's too many people in too small or in too short a time on too broad a topic and without enough structure and whatever. So we can fix that. So one of them that I borrow also from Liberating Structures is called Conversation Cafe. It's similar to a World Cafe, which probably some folks have heard of. And the secret to Conversation Cafe is it's 4 rounds, and you tend to be at smaller groups. So it's like 5 to 7 instead of 10 or 12 or 16 or 20 or whatever people put in a group. And you're doing it in rounds. So the first round is everyone gets a minute, and you go in order. So like, I think this, and here's what I think. And then the next person goes, here's what I think. And they got a minute. And then you do a second round. And what tends to happen is it evolves and changes. So, I'm like, Logan said this thing that was really interesting in the first round. And what it reminded me of is that, and it sort of moves along and the conversation kind of evolves. And then the third round is just an open conversation round, which is more sort of that typical, this is how all roundtables go, but it's already, you've warmed up to it and people have all had a chance to participate. And that's probably, 15, 20 minutes or so. And then there's a closing round where everyone goes in order. Still a roundtable. It's still basically the same amount of time. It's still basically the same setup. It's still basically the same. But it works way better than when people just say, well, we did a roundtable. And, I think, Troika, or I call it Triangle Consulting in the deck of cards here I'm coming up with, it's also sort of a roundtable format. It's people helping each other, talking about their problems. They're just sitting in triangles of 3 instead of big roundtables of 12 or something. I also have run open space technology, technically is the term, a couple times in the last couple weeks, and I love it. I often don't get a chance to run it enough with groups because it feels scary, but it's agendaless, right? We basically walk in to a space and we say, hey, what are the topics that you all want to talk about? And then those topics become their own little groups. And it came out of Harrison Owen, who came up with it, went to conferences and realized that the best conversations and the best moments at those conferences were the coffee breaks. And he said, so we have this conference that's an hour of content and then 15 minutes that people really like, and then an hour of content that people don't really like, and then 15 minutes that people do. Why don't we flip that? And why don't we design, our events so that it's mostly coffee breaks? So I think that's lovely. Every time I've run it, it's great. And people are like, these are the topics that are important today, not what we thought was going to be important 6 months ago or a year ago when we were putting stuff on the agenda. Let me think of it. There's a whole bunch of sort of presentation formats, and I think they're difficult and they're hard to do well. But something like a pecha kucha, which some people may call pechakaka, like pronounce a number of different ways. But it's a short talk, it's an automated talk. It's still people at a lectern or on a stage. It's still with slides, but it's 20 seconds per slide for 20 slides. They advance automatically. Has sort of like a TED Talk feel about it. So even if you're an organization that says like, we couldn't possibly do away with slides, I think the answer is you could do them in a different way, in a better way. And you sort of put stuff into about 7 minutes of really high quality, thoughtful content that otherwise would be sort of 40 or 50 minutes of amorphous, lots of slides, lots of bullets, lots of text. I could go on, but I mean, the reality is there's dozens and dozens and dozens, and the stuff behind me, you can see my bookshelves. There's dozens of different ways that you can tackle this, and to just say, well, we only have two tools in the toolbox, and that's lecture and panel and maybe sort of mediocre roundtable. We can do better. There's just lots of stuff out there that we can use. Oh yeah.
I mean, we had to, what are some other ones we've tried? We did the pitch your top. We did a pitch your topic at one of our conferences that was, we had folks on Post-its just write the name, like the topic of what they think they could talk about without slides for like 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we had everybody vote on it. So you had to do it earlier in the day. We had the voting happen during breaks. And then we let them know at lunchtime, okay, when we come back from lunch, here's the three that got voted. And we didn't know who had pitched them. So they then revealed themselves.
Yeah.
But that was kind of cool because we could, 1, tapped into the experience in the room, and 2, then we got to tap into what people actually wanted to hear about. And that was a really fun one. And then I like but they have no prep, right? They just walk into it cold. Yeah. They would just walk. I mean, they've pitched it. So they said I could talk about, like, one gal talked about major international event recruiting because she does HR a bunch for it. So she was going to give you tips on how to get hired at an event. Yeah. And they don't have any slides or anything, but that was a fun one. And then I love a lightning talk, similar like yours with the 20-second slides, I think is the more technical version. But even like I challenged you to do a lightning talk for us at BepCon. And it is interesting, a challenge to disseminate a large thing into a small amount of time, but doing that, but then following it up with like breakouts where you could dive more into the topics. Or I've done it where lightning talk happens, we immediately go to breakouts virtually because it's so easy to do that, harder for an in-person room. Yeah. But we had changed that up for in-person. We did lightning talks about like buzzwords. It was like sustainability, DEI, accessibility. And then once that session was done, we did walk-in talks where each of those speakers was going to take people out of the room and you could join them and just walk to expand on the topic. Right. And want to learn more. So I feel like, again, to your point, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, or we did this last week in our episode talking about not boiling the ocean. I'm like, you don't have to throw out every panel and every lecture and say never again, but it's what's one session that you can change the intentionality behind it and realize that that boring standard format maybe isn't serving the goal of that session. Because you never know what your attendees are going to love.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can sacrifice one panel, one lecture, whatever, and take that 50 minutes and repurpose it into something else. And in so doing, make an event twice as good.
Oh, yeah, easily. So hopefully, and there's more, I know we can put more resources. I'll link to Liberating Structures. Lee, if you want to send me a couple of those books, I'll put them in the show notes for folks. But I do want to dig into these engagement cards that you've created.
Yeah.
So you have a deck of cards that you've made. You said you got about 60. And I'd love, before we jump into them, can you tell our listeners about how those came to be and what problem are you trying to solve with those engagement cards?
Yeah, let me, got a concept deck right here. I know if you're listening, you don't get to see it, but it looks beautiful. It's a deck, it's like an oversized deck of cards. They're 3.5 by 5 inches. There's 60 decks or 60 cards in the deck. And they go through about 10 different categories. So you've got like networking, you've got space, or like sort of the room setup. You've got presentations, a whole bunch of sort of like the normal components of an event or of a conference there. How they came up is in my role, I think just get a chance to listen and record and check out a whole bunch of different things that people are doing from lots of different methodologies and good ideas, and going to lots of different events, and you're like, that works really well. Let's borrow that. Let's try it. Let's adapt it. Let's use it with this. Let's see what works. And I think it's all been stuck in my head. So there's hundreds of these now that are just stuck there. So part of it was just, how do I get them out of my head and into some format that other people could use? But I think it is, I don't want to say it's all altruism, right? But I think there is a feeling of, I got into doing this work because I was someone who was going to conferences and standing at booths and feeling like, God, is this as good as it gets? Like, did I fly across the country to spend 2 days in Chicago to just sit here and be talked at? And, here I am in this world or in this room with all these really smart, accomplished, powerful people, and we're not doing anything to harness that. And, how do we do more with it to harness that power? But I think also just to deliver a really great event. So the idea behind the deck is almost as simple as you could pull any card at random and probably drop it into an event and make it better. I think there's probably a more systematic way of saying, we have this reception coming up. Let me go to the networking section and look through a couple cards and see if I could add that. And then there's 60 cards. 3 or 4 of them are strategic cards. So it's really like a year ahead of time, 2 years ahead of time. Let's really sit down and think about, how do we fix this event on a broad scale, instead of just, it's a week beforehand. Could we fix the reception? We could, but the mold has already been cast at that point. How do we build a better mold a year ahead of time?
Oh, I love that. And that's what I'm like, and fix is a good word, but I'm also like, even if you have a great event, it's like, okay, how do we build on that? I feel like I've had clients who are like, we don't know how we're going to top it. And I was like, okay, we can figure out, like, again, we don't have to blow faces off, but there's got to be incremental changes we can make. So I love that your cards both help larger strategic, and then some of them are a little bit more actionable. I would love, if you're willing, for us to have some fun and try picking a card at random.
Let's do it. All right. I visually, I'll pretend that I'm holding them. The folks who are listening will just believe that I'm holding 60 cards in my hand. Oh, well, we'll take the first 3 out because those are like the about directions cards. But then I guess you basically have your choice between, card number, let's say 4 and card number 60. The first couple are the strategic ones. And then we move through energizers, networking, breaks, sessions or presentations, panels, group dialogue like roundtables, getting questions and ideas, space and setup, and then closings.
Great. Let's try I'm going to pick a number 15. Where are we with 15? 1-5.
Okay. This is actually like it's almost the dumbest one in the book in a way. I call it neighbor, but like it's a classic, but it's a classic because it endures. So I call it neighbor hobnob. You've probably seen it or done it in different ways, but it's just turn to a neighbor, and we do these moments all the time. But it's a reminder that this is an actual technique to say, okay, we're starting the event. Just turn to the person next to you, or if we're sitting in chairs, or sorry, if we're sitting at pods, we're sitting at tables, just turn to the people next to you and just introduce yourselves, and let's carve out time to do that, and let's be intentional about it. And I think so. Each one of these cards is, I'm going to show one on the screen here, a little concept card. I mean, there's 3 by 5 inches or 3.5 by 5 inches, and it's basically a recipe card. And so people have told me, oh yeah, sometimes we've tried to do this thing where we have people meet each other and it doesn't go well and they dislike it. And you think, it can't be that hard to screw it up. Like what is there to screw up? So let's put it in, here are all the steps. And I think one of the things that people forget to do is give folks a good question to ask. So they're just like, so how are you? I'm good. So what do you do? I'm an accountant. Me too. We're in an accounting conference. And it's like, but a question like, what brings you here? Or what are you hoping to get from it? Or how did you get into this field? Or even like one of these golden questions of what question are you trying to answer in the next 2 days at this conference is really quite compelling. And I love doing this at the very first 5 minutes of an event because it just changes the dynamic of the rest of the event. But I also like doing it at the beginning of each session. And there may be some eye rolling, but you know what? People benefit from all those connections, and they reap the rewards from, oh, now I'm connected to 10 other people instead of being by myself or only being with the group that I came from. So that's number 15, neighbor hobnob. You want to go for another one?
Yeah, let's go for another one. How about 52? Let's go to the other side of here.
All right, 52. 52 is called High Boy Expo. Sounds like a 1970s movie or something. So high boys are large sort of 2 foot tables that are elevated there, 2 foot wide, not 2 foot high. And I think what often happens is conferences think about expos or exhibitions as these big events with big tables and big booths, and they are really intensive in terms of the amount of space they need and the logistics, and we're bringing cranes. It's just like, it's a lot. It does bring in revenue, but it's a lot to set up. So you can do this in place of that. You can do it in place of, that actual space. You could do it to augment it, or you could do it as like a partner fair or something. And instead of saying we need big tables with lots of, screens and lots of brochures and lots of just stuff, we basically strip it down to saying, what are people here for? I think they're here to meet those people and talk over what's going on with that vendor or with that partner. And we don't need a lot for that. We just need a space that makes sense. So, 20 of these tables, 50 of these tables, whatever it is, in a space, and, they're labeled and we can tell who's there. But it's much easier to wander through a space that is, the size of a small ballroom or a small, like whatever sort of reception room, instead of a giant airplane hangar of an expo. And we can move quickly. We can use a little bell. We can ding people through it. Hey, it's been 10 minutes, move to the next table, move around. We just don't usually have that sort of control in an expo setting. And it's still basically a reception. We still basically have vendors in the reception and attendees in the reception, but it's much more compact. It's much easier to navigate. We sort of do away with the, like, let me show you on the giant screen and all that. And really, here's the problem that I have. Can I tell you about it, and can we solve it? And can we meet in a space that's pretty, pretty chill, I think. So that's High Boy Expo number 52.
I like that.
Yeah.
I want to know, for the sake of time, do you have it's probably hard to pick a favorite child, Lee, but is there one that either you find yourself reaching for again, or maybe one that would surprise our audience, or a favorite, if you have one from your cards?
It's like, your kids, they are all favorites. I mean, I will say the Triangle Consulting, the Troika Consulting, I love. I think it does a lot of things really well. Let's see here. I'm going to go with one that is actually also liberating structures, or there's a parallel to liberating structures. So this is Think, Pair, Share. I use it a lot. I think it's super flexible, and there are many different times and places where I would use this in a conference. I think the red light for me that goes on is always like, how do we get better questions? How do we get better comments? How do we get more engagement? And how do we probably save some time? And this is where I would throw that in. So instead of just saying, hey, are there any questions in the room, and sort of taking your chance that you're going to get either nothing or, terrible, self-centered, grandstanding kind of questions, or not really questions, just people telling you how smart they are. This is a really lovely way to do it. So I will say, at the end of a talk or something, hey, that was great. Instead of just taking the first hand up, here's what I'd like you to do. I would like you to each write down, the questions you have or the comments you have. You've got 1 minute, write them all down. Everybody in the room usually comes up with 5 things, maybe 10 things, but let's say there's 50 people in a room in a breakout or something. So that's 250 or 300, 400 ideas in 60 seconds that happen. Then we pair people up and we say, I want you to come up between the two of you with just like 2 or 1 idea that you really like, or 1 question that you really like. And the magic here is the energy goes up, the conversation goes up. It's just covert networking, right? You now have 50 people that are talking to each other that otherwise wouldn't be, about what they've just heard or what they're thinking about. And they're going to distill those ideas that they came up with individually to 1 or 2. You could do another layer where the 2s get paired together and they become groups of 4. So that's like a think, pair, share, or something like that. And then we've even done it at big tables. I did this at a conference for a nursing organization recently. And we did 1, 2, 4, and then 8. And then the 8 spoiled up their questions. They put it on, we used QR codes, went up into a tech, cloud. We used AI to distill those down, and we got those questions. But it's a really great way to get better questions, to filter out bad questions, to get more engagement, to get more energy. And, it's a little bit of a Trojan horse that maybe we don't need to do this all the time, but in so doing, we just get way better results. There's more energy, there's more networking without us having to say, hey, networking is happening now, we're doing networking. We don't. We just say, we want you to work together to come up with better questions for our speakers. And the bottom line is, people end up meeting each other at their tables or sitting next to each other that they would have never done. They would have just walked in and walked out and been like, I have no idea who I was sitting next to. So I use that all the time for questions, for comments, for ideas. I think it's magical. I mean, it's sort of a foundation of so much of the work that I do, and we use it in lots of different ways. But yeah, think, pair, share. It's amazing.
That's a great one. And yeah, you made a good point though. It's like, you don't have to do these ideas for everything. It is one of like finding the strategic, like, you've struggled to get feedback on a certain thing, or you are looking for a large amount of ideas around this topic. Like that sounds like that solves that for you, versus to your point, does anyone have ideas? And then you all sit there in silence. So I love that. But before we wrap up, do you have if a listener is listening to this episode and they're designing their conference, or even they're designing their event, and they're just like, what is a shift, or could it be a session format, or as a card you've referenced, that could have the biggest impact on their event?
I would say one super easy thing that's in here, and I think we talked about this in the previous episode, is I call it optimized name tags. And I think just thinking more about what you're putting on this thing that everyone is wearing matters a lot. I mean, just one line of, hey, ask me about, or I want to talk about, or I'm struggling with, or I can help you with, is a way better use of space than a giant logo of the conference that people are already at. They know where they are, right? Like, we could shrink that logo down and use that space somewhere else. And then I think, the earlier you get people to connect and broaden those networks, so it's not just, Logan and Lee walked in together and they're going to spend the rest of the conference together, sort of like in this defensive huddle. The more we can get people early on comfortable, where Lee meets somebody and Logan meets somebody, and now Lee and Logan know each other, and now Lee and Mary know each other, and Logan and Steve know each other, and now we're a group of 4, but those people know each other. And I think that's where the magic happens, that by the end of that first night, people are like, we're going out, we're going to a bar, and we're doing something, and they feel like a family. And I think they give you credit as the conference for making that happen. And you have, like, good design is invisible. You're not saying, oh, we did that. We made sure that you went out and had a good time. But I think you are. You're making those connections happen. So the earlier you can do something in a conference to get people just to like meet the person they're sitting next to and do it in a easy, quick, benevolent, non-dictatorial way, just make it fun and painless, is super easy. It makes a huge difference. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lee. Before we wrap up the episode, is there anything else you want to add? And if you can plug where listeners can connect with you and maybe find these magical cards.
Yeah. So we're finishing up design on them now, and then they have to go to the printer, and then they have to come back from the printer. But so the goal is hopefully by the end of the summer or early fall, these will be out on virtual shelves, I guess, which is to say they will be real products, but they will be on a virtual shelf. So yeah, I would send people again, website, bettermeetings.expert. And we'll have a link on there to register for the cards, or get them, or register if they're not out yet. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's been, as you know, with projects like this, I mean, or building an event, it's years in the making for something that you're like, oh, I'm just holding this thing in my hand. Did that take years? And it really has been, it's been really fun though. It's been fun talking about all these strategies and pulling them in and sort of getting ideas from lots of places. So I'm really looking forward to it. Super fun.
Well, that's so exciting. Thank you, Lee. And before we let you go, you have our bonus tip this week.
I have the bonus tip. Okay. So this is one of the cards, and I think we were talking about this with BepCon and sort of the idea of finding the purpose behind your event, and we talked about this with Vinu in the previous session, but just really trying to understand why people are there and not just putting yourself on autopilot and saying, well, the purpose is to recreate this, and that's what we're doing. So the technique that I use, I call it North Star Why. It's similar or very similar to 5 Whys, which came out of the Toyota manufacturing process. I'm just going to have you ask me why 5 times. You're going to be that person, but people could do it themselves. So we'll do this quickly. I am running I always use this example, the Pediatric Oncology Association, so Kids and Cancer. Okay, so we do an annual conference. Logan, what's your question for me?
Why?
Yeah, I mean, we do it every year, so that's really success, is to redo it every year.
Why?
Because we're trying to bring the reason we do it every year is because it was in our bylaws, and when this organization was founded, it was founded to do an annual conference. That was part of why it was started.
Why?
To bring our members together. It's really important that our members gather.
Why?
Because we're trying to improve how our members work with each other and improve research outcomes among cancer researchers.
Why?
Because we're trying to cure childhood cancer in the next 10 years, right? So I think that moves it away. I think a lot of conferences are stuck in the first 1 or 2 whys of like the success is doing the conference. And I think when you look at it through a lens of, oh, it's not just successful if we do the conference, but we're trying to cure cancer, I think then you start looking at things like, wow, we're just doing lots of panels, and probably the value in this event is more of those people connecting and sharing their research and not just being talked at. And, there's lots of things that change, but it's a really simple exercise, but it's super powerful. You can do it with groups. You can do it with a committee. I love doing it, and super easy, very snack sized.
Amazing. Well, Lee, thank you so much for that bonus tip. And thank you for being my guest co-host over these last couple episodes. It's been really fun having you.
Super fun. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
We'll definitely be signing up to check out those cards. So that brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can send us an email at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can also connect with us directly on LinkedIn. That's myself, Mary, or Lee. We'd love to hear from you. Just put in there that little note that you heard about us through the podcast. And if you want more Better Events content, join our private paid community over on Substack. And as always, we want to thank you for listening, and we'll be back in your feeds again next Wednesday.